Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Sympozjum Egejskie, the 8th conference in Aegean archaeology. We're very sorry that we're not able to welcome you to what is currently a very sunny Warsaw, very hot Warsaw as well. But the one benefit of having this online format is that we are able to welcome more people from across the world than we have ever been able to do so before. And before I go on any further, I would like to pass over to the Dean of our faculty, that is Professor Bartosz Kontny, who will welcome you all formally to this event.
Thank you, Dr. Olsbrook. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, there's a great pleasure and honor for me to speak on behalf of the Faculty of Archaeology, University of Warsaw, and to participate in the virtual, unfortunately, opening ceremony of the International Virtual Meeting, unfortunately, once again. I mean the 8th conference in Aegean archaeology. The scientific meeting is organized by the Department of Aegean and Textile Archaeology of the Faculty of Archaeology, University of Warsaw, which is the newly created unit. I would like to thank the organizing committee, Dr. Stephanie Olsbrook, Professor Agatha Olonska, Professor Kazimierz Lewartowski, and Katarzyna Brovska, of course, for all their organizational efforts, which were definitely efficacious. This is exemplified by the fact that the group of scientists who gather here is beyond doubt impressive. Colleagues from different countries and continents even show well how inspiring area of knowledge the Aegean archaeology is and how great potential it possesses. Therefore, there is no exaggeration to say we are really very proud to host you within the, once again, virtual walls of the Faculty of Archaeology. The topic, or actually the plethora of research fields of the conference, or represented during the conference, is highly interesting and thrilling as usual, I dare to say, also from the point of view of the archaeologists specializing in the barbarian Europe, which is my own perspective. I am very glad also because of the fact that the conference expresses growing interest in Aegean archaeology in the University of Warsaw. It has become an important base, I dare to say the cornerstone of Mediterranean archaeology in the Faculty of Archaeology. Unfortunately, I may only welcome you in the virtual space of the Faculty of Archaeology, but I do hope that the next 9th conference will be held in live version. I wish you a friendly atmosphere, informative speeches, fruitful discussions, and proceedings to be published soon in acknowledged publishing house. Have a good conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bartosz Kontny, for that wonderful welcome to everybody. So before we go any further, I thought that what I could do is provide a little bit of background information about this particular conference series, because I can see from the people who applied that there's many newcomers, whereas we also welcome back a few familiar faces as well, or at least your names are familiar, and eventually we may be able to see your faces via the video too. So this conference series first started in 2013, and it was basically the brainchild of my colleague Katarzyna, and she wanted to create a platform that would allow young scientists just starting out in their careers to be able to connect with each other and to be able to participate in a friendly atmosphere, and also to be able to publish their work in a peer-reviewed edited series. So what's been very interesting is the way that this particular conference series has grown over the years. And in fact, this year, even though it is virtual, it is the biggest event that's ever been held in this series. We were absolutely overwhelmed by the number of applications that we received. And so we have for the first time expanded to 3 days in order to fit everybody in. We're extremely pleased and proud that this has been able to happen. And on the subject of young scholars, I'm going to move on to, it is connected, but you'll just have to give me a moment to say a few words about the passing of a dear colleague and a very close friend of mine, Dr. Elizabeth French. Now, I'm sure that the name is very familiar to all of you, and her achievements in archaeology are numerous, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of people across the globe who have been expressing their admiration at those achievements, particularly, of course, in the archaeology of pottery, defining the pottery chronology, and typology in particular, and also her long-standing connection with Mycenae. She was probably the only Mycenaean scholar who could boast of having learnt her pottery sitting on her father's knee as a small child, and she participated in her first excavation at Mycenae at the age of 8. Now, Lisa was never able to attend any of these Aegean conferences, and she often expressed sadness that she wasn't able to. And I have been a participant in this conference series for several years now, and every time I return back to the UK, I would be invited round to tea, and she would pump me for information. She wanted to know all about the exciting new research that was being done by early career scholars at what she saw was the cutting edge. And we may have heard that, you know, she was had a bit of a reputation for being quite fierce, but perhaps asking rather difficult questions, even of young scholars. But this was because she really did admire and was interested in their work. Now, it's worthwhile remembering that all of those achievements that I listed were made while she had no formal archaeological position, at least not up until she was appointed the director of the British School at Athens right at the end of the 1980s. So there's many decades of contribution without having a formal archaeological role. And I thought that I would mention this because, as we know, in the current climate, there seems to be a growing trend in archaeology in both Europe and in America and perhaps elsewhere, where early career scholars are more frequently finding themselves in a precarious position, either with short-term employment or having to act as independent scholars for a long period of time. And this happened to myself as well. But the thing is that even though we may end up in this situation, you can still make a very valuable contribution to archaeology, just as Lisa French was able to do so. And speaking of her terrifying reputation, I do remember being at my very first seminar that I ever gave, and she walked into the room and I was absolutely terrified and practically rooted to the spot. And of course, there were all sorts of computer troubles and everything that you could possibly imagine went wrong. But somehow we ended up becoming close friends, close colleagues. And although I think it's often said quite rightly that she didn't suffer falls gladly, she did suffer this particular fall very gladly. And I was extremely glad that she did so. I can't possibly thank her enough for all of the help that she gave me. Now, before I move on to going through the usual house rules of you know, how we should conduct ourselves over Zoom, I'm just going to ask each of my co-hosts to say a couple of very brief words about themselves. So as I happen to be still talking at the moment, I will start with myself. I am Stephanie Alderbrook. I am the lead organizer for the conference this year. And as Professor Kontny said, this is all being organized by the Department for Aegean and Textile Archaeology, of which I'm a member, and I am particularly interested in researching late Bronze Age Mycenae and its metalwork. And perhaps if you, Professor Kazimierz Lewotowski, could introduce yourself, please.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Welcome to everyone. Nice to meet you all here in very warm Warsaw. So I am the head of the Department of the Aegean and Textile Archaeology. I'm interested mostly in Mycenaean civilization, and most of my works were dealing with Mycenaean burial habits and things like that. Now I'm rather focused on iconography and generally Aegean iconography. Thank you.
And if Dr. Agatha Olonska could introduce herself, please.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm interested in mostly Mina and Crete, but my first focus of interest is textile production and also all sorts of technical aspects of making textiles in Bronze Age Aegean. So I'm also a textile ecologist. I am now conducting a project entitled Textiles and Seals, and this is about the relationships between textile production and seals and sealing practices in the Bronze Age Greece. And I'm also chairing the cost action called Europe Through Textiles. It's a new big action gathering all scholars from 32 countries interested in understanding textiles and textile production and their influence on history of Europe. So it's like a big topic. Thank you.
And last, but of course not least, Janja Brovska.
Hi, my name is Janja Brovska. I'm a PhD candidate here at the Faculty of Archaeology, University of Warsaw, working on Aegean type funerary architecture of southern Sicily. And I have recently just closed another project on Bronze Age textile tools from also Sicily. And I've been organizing or co-organizing this conference and co-editing our Aegean archaeology series together with Agatha and Kazimierz, and now also our precious Stephanie since the very beginning. And I'm very happy to welcome you here on our 8th edition of this conference.
Right, as you can see here, we are quite a tight-knit and friendly community at the University of Warsaw. And I hope that we will be able to spread the same kind of friendly but still productive atmosphere to this conference. Now, in the spirit of that, we have sort of laid down a few ground rules about the use of Zoom, just in order to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible and that the speaker is not interrupted or distracted partway through. So we would ask everybody to kindly make sure that they are on mute and that they also have their video off whilst the presentations are happening. Now, having the video off means that we'll be able to save some broadband, and I know that many people are joining us from places with rather irregular connections, since they're on fieldwork currently or in other strange locations, and so therefore we do ask you to do that. And the audio, well, I mean, I think that's fairly obvious why we ask you to make sure that you're muted. The way that the conference is designed is that we will have 3 or 4 papers per session. And the idea is that each one of these sessions will have the papers following continuously, one after the other. And then afterwards, we've allotted some time in order to allow for the discussion. So we ask people if they could leave their questions until the discussion. If you wish to ask a question, you can either use the raise hand function, which I believe is under reactions on your list of, on your menu for Zoom at the bottom. Or you can type either question or type out the entire question if you are a little camera shy, if you're trying to hide the fact that you're still in your pajamas with heavy coffee with you or something like this at this particular time. Fair enough. And we will ask it on your behalf. If you could please try and avoid using the chat unless you have some kind of emergency or so on and so forth until we use it for the questions, that would be exceedingly helpful because it can be very distracting for the speaker to see constant chat notifications coming up. Now, I know that it is something that Zoom and all these other online platforms have not been able to replicate, which is the round of applause and the appreciation that everybody feels towards each speaker. And I know that's why many of you want to put messages in the chat to make sure that people understand that their papers were well received. But as I say, if you could leave that until the discussion session, that would be fantastic. And there is always the option, if you wish to show your appreciation, again, in the same menu option, under reactions, there should be an applause or, I don't know, is that supposed to be a bouquet of flowers or a very strange firework? I don't know, but whatever it happens to be. And finally, this is all being recorded. So we do ask all of our speakers to keep to time in order to aid with the recording process. There are 7 papers which will not be recorded because the presenters are going to be sharing unpublished research or they have a work in progress that they don't wish to have recorded. But that does mean that you can see this, including this long rambling introduction, all over again anytime you wish to.